Hey everyone, and welcome to the Will to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Will Jenkins, joined by my co-host Trent Marsh. Before we get into it, as always, I want to make that shameless plug and ask you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can actually also interact with us through those reviews, or you can follow along at the Will to Hunt on all social platforms and continue the conversation there. So this is episode 3, and we're going to talk truck stuff today. Pretty much any outdoor adventure usually starts with a truck or at least an SUV, but today we're going to focus on trucks and kind of talk through a few topics. The theme being that stock trucks can kind of do a lot, and there isn't a ton you need to do to improve performance, really, because they come out of the factory with most of the stuff that you need to get outdoors and do cool stuff and not get stuck too terribly bad. Trent, what kind of truck are you driving these days?
I 2017 Toyota Tundra, with the TRD package SR5, so just kind of the middle of the road trim package. It's got that iForce 5.7 in it. It's a good all around truck. It's the Crew Max on those Tundras. If you haven't seen one, it's a living room on wheels.
Yeah,
4-wheel drive. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's your truck has 3 liters on mine. I have a 2017 F-150 XLT, and it has the 2.7 liter EcoBoost, which seems weird, but it's a great tiny engine. I don't have any complaints about it. I also have the Super Crew, the big cab, and that's a buddy of mine who off-roads and does a lot of stuff in like a Tacoma that costs more than my F-150, and he complains about the space in it. And I was like, my actual quote was that it's like off-roading in a living room when I've taken my truck off-road, because It's like I can spread out. I've got people in there, dogs, whatever is in the cab. It's, there's plenty more in the bed, but the cab's so huge. But yeah, it's the full-size trucks now, especially the way, I've not been in a current model Tundra to know the back seat very well, but I just helped a buddy move. He runs a cornhole league, and with the seats up in the back and the flat floor pan in the F-150, we fit enough between the bed and the cab. We fit 20 cornhole boards, 5 scoring towers, drink holders, and some other thing that he bought from this woodworker, and we still had room to spare in the cab. Most of the boards were in the bed, but all that other stuff was crammed in the back seat, and we could have carried plenty more. So it's a nice little feature in there for sure.
I use one of those, the Plano, like the snap trunk gear lockers. I use one of those for all my hunting gear in the fall, and when the seats are folded up in the back seat, like I could almost fit 2 of those side by side. Like it's massive. Moving dogs around, we've since had to put the Golden down. We had a 90-pound Golden Retriever and a 115-pound Rottweiler, and there's still room for a Shetland pony in the back seat, and they're both in there. Like it's the space is awesome. Like truthfully, and that I love that Tundra. I mean, absolutely. I growing up, I was always a Chevy guy, and just some of the configurations and some of those changes. And when we went and, when we were looking for trucks this last time around and went the Tundra route, if I've got a complaint, if you're going to make me complain about something, that iForce motor, when it first came out, really kind of wrecked everybody else's 5.7 platform. Like it just outdid all of them, but it hasn't been touched for about a decade. So my fuel economy, not great. But the flip side of it is I don't buy a truck for fuel economy. Like that's just my approach. I'm pulling a boat, or I'm hunting, sometimes I'm pulling, like a tractor or something on a trailer. The difference to me in a truck between getting 16 miles to the gallon, which is about what I get just tooling around, short hauls. I've gone as high as 22 on the highway, or to getting 22 when I'm just kind of knocking around here doing that kind of stuff. Like that doesn't factor in. I would much rather have the power that I have and the performance that I have in that 5.7 that maybe doesn't have great fuel efficiency, because that's not why I have a truck.
Right. Yeah.
If I want a fuel efficient vehicle, I'll go drive the Highlander, which is also Toyota that we also love. And we get 25 to 28 miles over the highway with that. So no, we're not going to take the Tundra on vacation. We'll take the Highlander. Meanwhile, if I need to pull away with a house, I'll put it for low and know that I can.
Yeah. Well, and I'm almost the opposite. Like I went for, I kind of wanted the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, but I was fine with the 2.7 liter. And I don't tow anything. I don't have anything to tow, any need to tow anything at this point. And it is our family vehicle / road trip machine for our family. My wife's car is a Mini Countryman, and we have 3 kids and a giant dog. So we're not piling. We have fit all 5 of us and Odin in the Mini, but it's not fun for very long. And yeah, it's kind of the same deal. The back seat of that F-150, I can fold it up and fit Odin's Gunner intermediate kennel in the back, and that thing's a monster. And it fits perfect, and it makes it easy because I'm driving around hunting birds. I don't know. I think the coldest day was like -8, and I don't really want him in the bed. He's spoiled. He works hard. He can stay in the cab. So yeah, I like that extra space. But kind of to move on, one of our topics is that we talked about that trucks off the line now are pretty capable. There's a lot of stuff, and a writer I like reading, his name's Wes Seiler. We don't necessarily agree on everything, but I like his style and his approach to stuff. And he kind of talks about some of the numbers that don't really matter, and what matters is approach, breakover, and departure angle, less about ground clearance and stuff. And I think that's a pretty spot on take. But really, what you need for any stock truck to be better is just whatever the biggest tire is that you can fit in there without rubbing on stuff.
Right.
Maybe some better underbody protection. Like my truck is the XLT, it's not the FX4. So the underbody is that like carpety fiber board, and it actually does a pretty good job because I ran into some stuff and it pushed into it, but it didn't break it. So it's not terrible, but I can't do that too many more times or it's just going to shred.
Right.
And then maybe a leveling kit, and not the blocks, not just chunks of plastic in your suspension. The actual, it's basically a height adjustable coilover package. Like Bilstein makes one, Fox makes one, and not stressing it out to the highest one, but just getting a little extra room for that slightly bigger tire. And I think that's really, I mean, you can go all out, but it's the point of diminishing return. You ruin all fuel efficiency, ride comfort, all that stuff when you fart with it and put giant lift kits on them.
Well, and I've had this conversation, a couple different sources that I went to just to see, what are the performance options, because I bought this truck new and I'm basically going to drive it till the wheels fall off. So
yeah,
if is there some performance tuning that can be done to it? And even just a handful of years ago, 10 years ago, there were, you could spend a couple $100, and whether it was a chip or whether it was even just the really simple tuners that you could get for stuff, and make some pretty significant changes. And then, you go back another couple generations and okay, it was fine to have your stock 305, your stock 350, but you were going to put a different cam in it, or you were going to put, something, there's always something you were going to do. We're beyond that anymore. First of all, the computer controls and stuff anymore, which makes that's a double-edged sword all by itself, because you good luck working on your own vehicle anymore, right? Like you can't just let's pull the motor this weekend and put a new top end in it just for fun. Like it's probably not going to go well for you, because
are you an electrical engineer? Because you're going to need to be.
Even if you can do the wrench turning portion, there's computer implications that you're not able to take care of with the changes that you've made. But secondarily, it's just really not needed anymore. Like they're literally, they're rolling off the line maximized for horsepower, fuel efficiency, torque. Like they're already squeezing every drop of performance out of these vehicles way more than they were just 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
go back further than that, and you were leaving even the performance vehicles of the 70s and early 80s were leaving a lot on the table in terms of stuff that
Yep.
you could still upgrade. And it's just not the case anymore. Truthfully, at this point, 90% of it's cosmetic. You want it to
Yeah.
look a little bit different. But
Mhm.
even if you're doing a different tire or slightly different suspension, unless you're rock crawling or
Right.
doing something other than, okay, I'm gonna pull my boat to the lake and it might, whatever the case may be, or I'm gonna drive across this cornfield and get into the woods. Like I'm pretty comfortable my bone
Yeah.
stock Tundra is gonna get where I need to get and also get back out of it.
Yeah.
It's there's stuff you can do, but to me it mostly ends up being kind of more cosmetic than anything.
Yeah. Agreed. And yeah, we'll get into it in a little bit, but kind of next up, this is something I kind of have all the ingredients just spread out around my truck, but I think you're a little more organized in it. Something that is definitely good to keep in the truck, kind of a go bag that's just kind of always there, that has the necessities. What are you throwing in there?
And this is something, truthfully, this is something I keep in all of my vehicles. My
Hmm.
wife's vehicle has one. At the moment we don't have a third vehicle that's just kind of like a knock around, run errands or whatever. But even when we did, I'm prepper is not the right term. There's a connotation with that anymore, but I suppose there's probably some people that would say I fall into that category. But it's more just I hate the idea of being unprepared. So
Yeah.
I like to keep a small go bag in every vehicle of just some really basic stuff. My truck has I keep a small toolkit in every
Hmm.
vehicle because you never know.
Yeah.
But then my go bag, I'm keeping, even if it's just a light change of clothes, like you get stuck or you have to change a tire, you get filthy, or I've had it happen where I've got a flat tire on the side of the road
Hmm.
and I was on my way to a job interview. So I'm
Yeah.
wearing a suit and I'm not really wanting to lay down. And, so it's nice to be able to just have a pair of sweatpants or something that you can change real quick. And if you do need to do something like that, so a quick change of clothes, gloves and hat, because ideally that happens on a beautiful May afternoon when it's 60
Yeah.
degrees outside, but it never does. It's
Yep.
February and it's minus 12.
Hmm.
Flashlight, knife, emergency candles, like those little tea light candles you can throw in there. They burn for like 4 hours,
Yeah.
just because. Waterproof matches. I always like to keep socks and just an extra pair of gym shoes. Again, same
Hmm.
concept. If I'm out there in my wingtips, I would
Yeah.
like to be able to swap those out. And then emergency ponchos and paracords. You may never need any of that stuff, but the one time that you need it, it costs you $15 to have all that stuff in a
Yeah.
bag under your passenger seat,
Right.
and you did have it then. So
Well, and so many of those things, it's like, even if it's not emergent, sometimes just having those things just makes like, especially as silly as it is, like paracord. Like, I have that stuff stuffed in everything, like every toolbox bag, duffel bag, there's a substantial amount of paracord, because rarely do I do something where it wouldn't be convenient to tie something
right.
somewhere, whether I'm actually stuck or if I'm setting tree stands or, like anything.
Well,
It
and
seems like I always need it, and I just keep it everywhere.
that's the other part too. I mean, we're coming at, like, we're talking about this generically, like that. I think that
Yeah.
list kind of applies for anybody, but I think most people listening to us, given the audience, they're
Right.
hunters, they're fishermen or whatever, like that. Honestly, the times I've had to go into my go bag have more revolved around the fact that I slipped when I was, loading the boat on the trailer, and it's either wear wet socks and wet shoes for the 40-minute
Yeah.
drive home,
Yep.
or dig into my bag real quick, swap out, like it's just smart to have, not just for your to have in your truck for an emergency, but to have as you're out doing things in the outdoors as just a backup to have things on hand. And it's
Yeah.
too easy to forget about it if you don't just take the time one weekend and say, all right, I got a pair of gym shoes that I never use, and here's a pair of ratty sweats that the wife has wanted
Hmm.
me to get out of the house, or your husband has wanted you to get out of the house because he, whatever, they're just
Yep.
like just throw them in a bag, and they're perfect for in a bad situation as a backup,
Yep.
and you're covered.
Yep. Absolutely. And kind of in that same vein of sorts is our kind of our next topic, which is a recovery kit. And I built mine before I took my son Mason out to South Dakota almost a year ago now. Went out to the northwest corner of South Dakota. I'd only had the F-150 for 3 months at this point, so I didn't have a solid recovery kit. So I kind of built one. Some of the stuff I had, some I had to order. But I'll kind of run through what's in that kit and a fun little story of why I needed it so badly, and I'm so glad I did it. The first thing I keep in there is a toe strap. I don't use like a snatch strap or one of those ones that has like the elastic properties because they scare the hell out of me. I'd rather just have a toe strap. So I have a toe strap. I have a hitch receiver D shackle, so it goes into the 2-inch receiver in the back, and it's a D shackle. And I do that because I have tow hooks on the front, and on the back there's nothing but the bumper and the hitch receiver. And I've seen plenty of people try to hook to the little hooks on the side of the hitch receiver that are for the chains, and those are for emergency use only, not to tow the entire weight of your truck being stuck out, because
Right.
it'll bend the hell out of them and ruin your receiver. So I got the D shackle. That came in handy when I was stupid this winter and got my truck stuck in the snow. I keep an air compressor in there, and nothing fancy. I mean, you can spend $800 and get the ARB suitcase twin piston one. I'd love to have that, but it costs more than 5 times my entire kit, so that'll wait. It's just like a $35 or $40 cigarette lighter plug-in air compressor, and that serves two purposes: to fix a flat, but also if you air down to go off-road somewhere, or you get stuck and you need to air down to get out of it, you can get your tires back up to a decent pressure. It's not fast, but it'll do the job.
It's a lot faster than walking.
Yeah, or going 15 miles an hour down the shoulder until you find somewhere.
Right.
I do keep a flat repair kit in there.
Same. I keep it's in my toolbox. I keep a plug kit in there all the time.
Yeah, or you can use slime, because most of the time that'll get you where you're going, like the stuff where you just plug it up and roll the tire around to plug the holes. But the flat repair kit isn't that much. It's more effort, but it's not that much more, and it's permanent.
It's like people get intimidated by it. Like one of those plug kits is so easy. Like there are 15,000 videos on YouTube to show you how to use them, and it's if you can cut up potatoes on your dinner plate, you can do a plug repair kit, even like in the middle of nowhere.
And there was a news story recently. I forget what state park or national forest it was. I want to say it was somewhere in the desert Southwest, and I did a good job preparing. Obviously, when I wrote the notes for this, I had a lot more detail committed to memory than I do right now. But there's a couple out west that went just down like like I'd call them Forest Service roads, but it's kind of a desert area. They went out in their Subaru to go camping, and they ended up getting 2 flat tires. They only had 1 spare and nothing else. But the husband died. Like,
oh my,
he died of exposure.
Laughing. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So they got stuck out there for like 3 or 4 days. They made kind of the cardinal sin of being lost and left the vehicle. Mm-hmm. They found her alive, but not in perfect shape. And then they found the husband further away. He'd passed away. It seems like he had gotten a little delirious, and I think he fell off of a road edge or something. So it's like, it seems silly to keep a spare, like a flat tire repair kit, but they weren't 50 miles into the backcountry. They were on a service road, and it was just too far to walk anywhere. And all they needed was a $30 air compressor and a $20 flat repair kit, and it would have just been an inconvenience, right? Not the end of someone's life. You'd have lost
an afternoon, not your life.
yeah, exactly. So it's I definitely like having that in there. And then the last bit, I do have traction boards. I'd love to have Max Tracks, but they're expensive, so I got cheap knockoffs on Amazon, and I can see why they're cheap knockoffs, but they're still effective enough. than having to cut down a bunch of trees or gather enough brush to kind of build something. I keep a collapsible shovel. I do have jumper cables. I'd like to add one of those like rechargeable battery based starters,
Mhm.
but jumper cables will have to suffice for now.
Well, and a lot of times you can get like they're those all-in-one units anymore,
Yeah.
right? That are the air
Yep.
compressor and the jumper, and
Yep.
sometimes it's an emergency radio slash flashlight
Yeah.
slash
Microwave
knife
oven.
sharpener, microwave oven. Exactly, it's the whole thing.
Yeah. So I do have cables. Like I said, I'd like to have the one that has a battery capacity to it, but we'll get there. I do have a basic tool set, and it was a gift. It's one of those like mechanic tool sets in the little
Mhm.
plastic case. It's not going to last forever, but I it's just there when I need it. I do keep a hatchet in there as well, and all I have is whatever comes with the truck, that little accordion jack, but I'd like to get a better one, either a high lift or a bottle or something, just to have it in addition. But that's kind of my little stock recovery kit, and it absolutely saved me when I buried the truck in the nastiest cow smelling mud in South Dakota.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have the like I said, I've had to use my go bag so that I don't get a soup filthy.
Mm-hmm.
But dear Will, how how was it that you came by knowing what you needed to have in your
uh,
extraction kit?
so I'd been out to this area of South Dakota before, and I knew some of the roads were sketchy, and we actually fat biked in to hunt in this area, so it was easy to get through because like you find an obstacle, you walk around. Um, but we wanted to cover a lot more ground, so we were going to drive in this time. And luckily, I thought I hadn't bought all this stuff or put together what I had and built this kit before I went, because it was me and my son Mason. He's 14, and we're about 12 miles into this area, and it's the Slim Buttes area of South Dakota. So I'll divulge that it's not a huge area, and it's in the middle of nowhere. So you either know it well or won't care. Um, but you essentially ride along the top of the buttes, and it's beautiful out there. And we get about probably 12 miles in, and we're at the very north end. And I wanted to get to this one spot because I wanted to know if the service road actually connected through or not. My guess was no, but it was worth trying. So we get to this bottom, and it's a U shape. So you're coming down a hill. It's a 90-degree turn left over a short bottom and a 90-degree turn left up the next hill. So there is no carrying speed. So we kind of
I've seen
stop.
situations like this on ice road truckers.
Yeah, it's dirt hole dummy is what this is. No, so I get there and we kind of stop, and it's like that the surface is that like cracked earth, like it looks like a dried bed, and there had been nothing remotely wet up to this point, no mud whatsoever. So I had no reason to believe it would be basically quicksand. So I look at Mason, I'm like, you want to keep going? He was like, yeah, why not? And like I stopped and looked, but I was like, nah, I don't see a reason not to. It doesn't look wet, but I didn't get out and check either. And of course, it's there's grazing rights on this section of BLM, so there's cattle everywhere, and I didn't think it through because it's like where there's cattle, any bottom is a disgusting slop, and it's just been warm enough to crack the surface. But I didn't think that far ahead, so I pulled out into it and just immediately sunk up to the frame. It was bad, and I just got this terrible look on my face and looked at Mason and just went, "Oh no." So that's when Mason learned how to drive a truck, because I was laying in the nastiest, stinkiest, siltiest cow pasture mud you've ever seen, digging under the truck. The traction boards come in a set of 2, and I'm going to buy another set because it inevitably I needed 3. The truck has the rear locker, so I can get the back wheels going. But in that crap, they just couldn't shove the front end through the mud either.
Right.
They needed something. So I need to get another set just to have 4. But after about an hour of digging and rolling around in mud and yelling at Mason and then apologizing and then yelling at Mason and then apologizing, we finally got it out. And luckily, I had a ton of water in the bed and a change of clothes, because I didn't want to get that smell in my truck because it would never leave if I did.
It would still be there.
Yeah, yeah. So I basically showered on the tailgate and cleaned up and got back in. But the stupid part is there was no way to get out but to go back through it.
Right.
So I just floored it, and we made it through that time because I carried tons of momentum and almost obliterated some guy's cow because it wouldn't move. But we got through it, and that's when I was like, okay, this will never not be in my truck. And thankfully, because this winter I slid off a shoulder down into a snowdrift and had to traction board my way through it until a guy in a giant lifted excursion showed up and pulled me out in about 20 seconds. But yeah, so it stays in the truck at all times.
Snow's a lot easier. Just, I mean, if you can get anything with momentum, you can get through snow. Like snow's not the problem, and especially like you were in South Dakota, and I've spent a fair amount of time in eastern Montana, southern Montana, northern Wyoming. And if you're thinking of going and hunting out there sometime, one thing you need to understand is you need all this stuff in your truck, because the mud out there is like nothing you have ever encountered.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Eastern Montana, they call it gumbo mud. Because it is absolutely dry 340 days out of the year. But then there's 25 days out of the year that it's a mess. I was on a photo shoot in southern Montana, and we were driving along the Matitsi Trail, which is, I mean, like I said, it's more than a service road, but it's not a highway. Right. And we got started wet snowing, and we had a Tacoma and a Jeep. Like, we're in off-road equipped vehicles.
Right. Yeah.
And we weren't even off the service road, and we got one of the Jeep got stuck in the middle of the service road. As you're telling your story, I just remember, remember that time I had that photo shoot? Yeah, that sucked. We burnt 2 hours of our day. And again, we're in the middle of a road. Like, you shouldn't get stuck in the middle of a road, but it just got so slimy and so gummy. And then he got off into a rain rut, and good luck.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I was super glad to have that kit, because it would have been, the nearest ranch was about 7 miles straight line. So that's more like a 15-mile hike in 90 some degrees, in white sandy 90 degrees. So it's just, everything reflects on you and it's miserable. But so, well, we'll wrap it up with one of our traditions here. We'll do the parting shot where unless Trent decides to just do whatever he wants, we talk about our pick of whiskey for the episode.
Drink. We don't discriminate. Any good drink to share. Just
the parting sip is maybe what it should be.
Yeah, but shot sounds cooler.
Yeah, it does.
So my parting shot for this episode, and it's one that I know in talking to folks that a lot of folks haven't tried. It's a George Remus bourbon whiskey, and this is batch number 3. It's a 93.8 proof. And I'll be honest, this bourbon confused the hell out of me. I don't drink my bourbon with ice. I generally prefer to drink it neat. And it was one of the harshest, just a really oaky, really harsh, really back of the palate, really, really got to you, very bitey. Kind of like some of your sharper ryes. It had much more of that type of a profile than what you would expect from a relatively mild bourbon. So, and I mean, it was good. It's not like it was a bad flavor. Just it wasn't the flavor profile for how I like to enjoy bourbon. So on a lark, I used it as a mixer. Let's see what it's like as a mixer. Maybe I can mellow some of that out. And every aspect of the profile of the entire bourbon changed by introducing it into a dark soda. So my recommendation is you go buy some George Remus and you buy a Diet A&W root beer and you put it in there, and you have the most delicious boozy cream soda you've ever had in your entire life, because that harsh oakiness comes out of it completely. And you end up with this really nice, subtle vanilla. and that oakiness ends up giving you a backbone that there's bourbon in there,
Mm-hmm.
but because of how it's mixing and interacting with everything else, it hits a lot more of your palate. You're getting into some of that sweet part of your tongue as opposed to just
Yeah.
the very back of your palate. So it's really hitting a lot more spots, and it, like I said, it really really gives you kind of a really cool cream soda type of a profile. So that's it. It's the George Remus bourbon whiskey.
Yeah. No, and I think you know, I'm a huge bourbon fan. I like it neat most of the time. And a lot of people like to poke fun if you mix anything with anything and blah blah blah. But like that's how I got into bourbon, is it was a mixer that I slowly started to enjoy the bourbon part of more and more and more, and then just got into drinking it neat. So
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with a nice little cream soda. But my parting shot for the week is just going to be Weller Special Reserve. So this is kind of the cheap Weller. There's what, probably 6 or 7 different variants that Weller
That
puts
are
out.
commonly available.
Yeah, right. Um, Weller Special Reserve is probably the easiest to find. The rest are significantly difficult to find. But it's 90 proof. It's a wheated recipe, so it's a wheated bourbon, and that's what Weller's known for, being supposedly the original wheated bourbon, meaning that the basically the balance of the mash bill is wheat. Um, and I was drinking some last night, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, this needs to be my parting shot. It's just good. It's 90 proof, so it's not going to melt your face. It's just easy drinking. It's good, neat on ice, whatever. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it, and yeah, it's one of my go-tos, and it's a nice. I don't have any fancy mixing notes. It's just delicious.
That's all you can ask.
Yeah, I love bourbon, and I get into like all the tasting notes and stuff, but at the end of the day, I don't understand half that stuff. I just know it's really good.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So awesome. Well, with that, I will wrap it all up for this episode. Again, please subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you can on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And feel free to send feedback through social media at The Will to Hunt, or there's a contact form on thewilltohunt.com. Feel free to throw some notes at us. Tell us how bad we're doing. Tell us why our opinions are wrong. And eventually we'll address some of that on an episode. So, yeah, thanks for listening.
See you, everybody.